Hey guys, I'm back with another video. Today I am doing a things I wish I'd known before I had my HSG test. So if you are getting one soon or your doctor has recommended that you get an HSG test, then today I will give you some tips and tell you a little bit about my experience. So I did a whole video on the actual day of the test, telling you like as it was happening, the different steps I went through that day and what it was like and my reaction immediately after. So if you're interested in that video, then I will link it right here and in the description. But today I have had time to reflect on the test. It was a couple months ago, and there's a few things that I wish I had known before the test that I would have done differently if I had known. So before I get into my tips, let me just back up a little bit and explain what an HSG test is. An HSG test is where it's kind of like a PAP, but you do it in front of an x-ray machine, and they put dye into your uterus, and so it goes into your fallopian tubes and to your spills out to your ovaries to see if there's any issues with your fallopian tubes, if you have any blockages or anything. So if everything's clear, the dye just goes right through and you can see it right there on the screen. And if there's a blockage, then they can see that too. So it's one of the first kind of fertility testing things that my doctor had me go do. It's my OBGYN who recommended it, and then I wasn't gonna do it because I wasn't sure if it was really necessary, and I don't know, I was not convinced that I wanted to go through with it because I was kind of nervous. And then I made an appointment with a reproductive endocrinologist and I asked them about it, and they said it's like a standard test that they have everybody do, so I decided to go forward with it while I was waiting for my appointment with the reproductive endocrinologist. Basically, overall, it's like a little bit painful, and again, you can go back to my other video and get more information, but it's a little bit painful for a very short amount of time. For me, I found it to be like pretty sharp pain, like extreme cramp, pinching pain, but again, it was like maybe 20 seconds, and just while the dye was going through and while they're inserting like the catheter to put the dye. But other than that, it really wasn't that bad, and it was well worth it to get the results. So if you're scared, don't be scared, and these tips will also help you with some of that. So my first tip is to take Advil or ibuprofen before you go to get your test done, like a couple hours before. My OBGYN didn't tell me I could take ibuprofen, and the doctor that was actually doing the HSG test, when she walked into the room at the hospital, was like, "Did you take Advil?" And I was like, "No." And she said, "Oh, okay, well, it would have helped." So I was like, "Okay, great, thanks. Now that's gonna be not helpful information for me, but maybe you guys who are about to take the test, now you know that can be a good way to kind of, ease the pain a little bit." And my doctor said it was totally fine. So maybe ask your doctor, make sure there's nothing like specific for you, reason why you shouldn't do it, but the doctor said I could have done that. So that would have helped. My second tip is go out to the store before the test and get the big like menstrual pads. If you don't already use those regularly, like me, I didn't have any pads at all. I think maybe some like panty liners in the house, because you're gonna bleed a little bit. Like there's a little bit of trauma to the area from the testing, plus the dye I think runs out. I didn't notice the dye running out too much, but it was mostly blood, but I guess it was the dye. Kind of thinking back, it was like dark. So a mix between the blood and the dye. We get very graphic when we're talking about infertility stuff, so sorry. So that spills out, and you need something like more substantial than a panty liner for at least a couple days, plus you're not allowed to use a tampon after the test, and you're not allowed to have sex for, I think they say like 5 to 7 days. I can't remember exactly. Again, ask your doctor, but something like that. So I didn't have any of those pads on hand, so I went to the store right after my test and I drove myself to the test, which was okay because I didn't have that much cramping afterwards, but some people do, so you might want to have somebody drive you. But I went to the store right after, and it was really uncomfortable to like walk into the store, and I wish I could have just gone straight home. So if I already had the pads on hand, then that would have been helpful. So that is my second tip. My third tip is, if you're going to do any sort of like genetic testing, then get it done before you do your HSG test. And there's a specific reason that I'm telling you this, because for me, I ran into a problem. I had not had regular periods for many months, like basically a year at the point that I was getting my HSG test. And they tell you, and I still don't know why, and I don't understand it, and I don't know how it makes sense, but they tell you that, and even my doctor said this, after you do the HSG test, that's a really good month to try because you're really like cleaned out and whatever. But I was thinking to myself, like, if I'm not ovulating regularly, then how is it gonna help for me to be cleaned out if there's no egg that's dropping? Like, it doesn't help if it's clean, if there's nothing that if your eggs aren't coming out. So I didn't think it would apply for me, but actually a couple weeks after that test, I did ovulate and I got a period on my own for the first time in like a year. And ever since then, and this is just for me personally, I don't think this happens for everyone, I have gotten periods every single month since then. So I don't know if that like helped kickstart it. I also, there were other factors at play. I took another round of Provera. I also went on started thyroid medication. So there's other things that were happening around that time, but I hadn't done any of that at the time that I had the HSG test. It was like a few weeks later. So my first time ovulating on my own was a couple weeks after the HSG test. Now, what happened is after the HSG test, I had my first appointment with my reproductive endocrinologist, and she offered me the option of doing some genetic testing, which I had not even thought about, like pre-pregnancy genetic testing. I had only thought of like after, you know, you're pregnant. I don't know. Just wasn't something that I had heard of. And so when she suggested it, that you at least do like a test for the most common like inherited genetic diseases, or do like a full panel, I thought, well, I might as well just do the full panel because I'll be wondering if I don't. So I did the full panel and I came back as a carrier for one genetic disease. Also made a video all about that experience, or two videos, one about my testing results, one about my husband's. So I will link those below if you're interested in those. But basically, I came back as a carrier, so my husband had to get tested for that same thing. But they won't just let you go in and get tested if one partner is a carrier. You can't just go get your blood drawn and you're done. They make you like go through a counseling session first, just in case, to kind of tell you what the disease is and what the prognosis is, and you know, the likelihood of your child getting it is like 50% if you're both carriers. So they want to make sure you're emotionally prepared if the results come back as you're both carriers. So it took a little bit to get that appointment and get his blood work done. So from the time that I had the HSG and got my results for the genetic testing, and between the time that my husband was getting his testing, that's when I ovulated for the first time. So we decided not to try that month, and that was a really hard decision because we had been waiting and trying and like not having anything happen for a year basically. I think it was a little less than a year at that point, but still, that's a long time. So it was really hard to know, like, think, oh, I feel different, feels like I'm ovulating. Like, I didn't even know what ovulating felt like either, because I had been on birth control for so long and then went off and didn't get periods on my own. So I didn't know like symptoms and signs. And so when it was happening, I was kind of like thinking, oh, am I ovulating? And then I took out some ovulation tests, I think, and like I knew. But anyway, so it is possible to ovulate after your HSG test, even if you haven't been regularly ovulating before. I didn't think it would happen for me because I have like hormonal issues, thyroid issues, PCOS, so I didn't think it would work for me, but it did. So if you're gonna do genetic testing, do that before you do the HSG, and then that way, when you go to do your HSG test, you're in the clear to try if the genetic testing comes back, you know, with good results. So those are my tips. If you guys have gotten an HSG test and there was anything you did that really helped you, leave it in the comments below, because I'm sure other people would like to know what other tips are. Everybody's experience is different, so maybe there's some things that you guys know that I didn't think of. And that's pretty much it for now. If you are new to my channel, welcome. I am documenting my infertility journey, so please subscribe if you want to follow along, and if you're a new subscriber, welcome. I'm so happy to have you. This is such a tough journey and we gotta stick together. If you like this video or found my tips helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in a video soon. Bye.